Adams Board of Selectmen meeting on Wednesday, April 15th, 2020, now to order. As I have with other meetings, I just want to remind people that we are conducting this public meeting virtually pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Adams Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted outside of, we have one member of the media who's in the room, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by tuning into, hopefully, we think channel 1303 live. Thank you to Northern Berkshire Community Television. However, despite our best efforts, if we're not able to provide for real-time access, a recording of this meeting will be posted on nbctc.org as soon as they are able. With all of that, I will ask everybody to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And before we start our meeting this evening, it is with heavy hearts that we share the news of the passing of former Selectman Arthur Skip Harrington. Skip was elected to 3 terms as a selectman in the town of Adams, serving from 2009 to 2017. Skip also served the town as the assistant building inspector, 1987 to 2002. He was also an original member of the committee that created the Ashtabula Rail Trail and was instrumental in having this trail and bike path run through the town of Adams. Services will be provided at a later date when family and the community can gather to celebrate Skip's life and his contributions to our community at a time when we really feel like we can honor Skip. But for this evening, I know I have 3 members of the board who are colleagues of Skip's, and we have a former colleague of Skip's here in the room as a media partner. And I just wanted to be respectful and see if we can just take a moment of silence to honor Skip Harrington. I thank you all for that. In honor of Skip Harrington's passing and his service to the town as a selectman, flags on the town buildings have been ordered to be lowered to half-staff. That was ordered today, and they will be lowered to half-staff through Friday, close of business on Friday, April 17th. If anyone is looking for the full obituary, you can go to the town's website, and you will find the information there. So thank you.
It's in the Berkshire Eagle today also.
It is a link to the Berkshire Eagle.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Thank you, though. So that'll bring us to the first item of business, which is the approval of minutes for March 25th, 2020. It is my understanding, and I just want to remind those that are on the phone, including the selectmen, that every vote that we take is a roll call vote. So I will call your name and ask you to vote accordingly. And I believe that all members of the board were present Wednesday, March 25th, and can vote on the minutes that are in front of us this evening.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion I waive the reading of the minutes and vote them as written.
I have a motion by Jim.
Second.
A second by Joe. Is there any discussion from the room? Any discussion from Rick or John on the phone? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Joe?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And it's a yes from Christine, so that is unanimous. Thank you very much.
I will now open things up to public comment. It looks like we have a number of people on the call this evening. I think some might be on the call to discuss some matters that are on the agenda, but if there's somebody on the phone who wishes to speak to us about a matter that is not on the agenda, I will unmute you all to give you that opportunity. Anyone? I'm going to go ahead and mute all of you again. And I will unmute John and Rick. Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to new business. I will turn things over to Town Administrator Jay Green to give us an update on COVID-19 and the town operations.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As always, this is a dynamic and fluid situation. However, I'm pleased to report that I think we may have finally stabilized in terms of having to react from an operational standpoint in terms of regulations and how we're reacting to the pandemic. As the governor has stated previously on almost his daily briefing, we are at the point here in the Commonwealth where we believe we're going to reach peak level of infection, probably sometime this week, if not on April 20th itself. What does that mean? Essentially, what that means is the rate of infection is at its greatest, and also with that brings with it the greatest opportunity for those folks affected by this that need hospital care to have to require hospital care. And that's what we're trying to avoid, is a rush on the medical system, particularly at the hospitals. However, with that being said, the weather is getting warmer, the days are getting longer, and we're coming up on about 30 days of one of the most strongest self-discipline required activities of the public that I think anyone's ever asked. We need everyone's cooperation to please make sure that you continue to socially distance, use common sense, sanitize, and be smart in your actions in order to keep the rate of infection down. If we lose our bearing now and begin to lose our self-discipline, there is a risk that the rate of infection will continue well into the balance of April and into May, and we will not be able to resume normal operations. At the governor's speeches that he gives, or his press conferences that he gives, it's very clear that the government is thinking about how to reopen, and that's very important. But I would caution the public not to become comfortable with that, and again, not to lose their bearing in terms of the self-discipline. We're doing well, but we're not out of the storm yet. As the governor said, we are in the middle of the eye of the hurricane. So please continue to stay at home if possible. If you do go out, please socially distance. Use masks if you're in areas where you cannot maintain a 6-foot distance, or in larger occupied areas such as a grocery store or a shopping plaza. And just use simple common sense doing that. A note about numbers that I'm going to give right now. I'm going to give an update on our COVID-19 infections here in northern Berkshire, in Berkshire County, here in Adams, and the rest of the state. But I want a cautionary note on this. These numbers have a severe variability to them. That is, on any given day, the number changes. A person comes out of infection, the public health nurse clears them, and then another person may go on. So the numbers are continually changing, they're dynamic. You cannot use these numbers, with a cautionary term here, to indicate overall trends. Just because the numbers may drop or the numbers may increase doesn't necessarily mean that that's a reflection on either the saturation of the infection within the community or whether or not we're actually defeating it. So with that cautionary terms, the latest is the following. As of 4 o'clock today, Massachusetts has indicated 29,918 positive cases of COVID-19. That's an increase from yesterday alone of 1,755. Currently, there have been 1,108 deaths as a result, which is a change of 151 since the last time the number was recorded. Getting closer to home, here in Berkshire County, we've identified 370 total cases within the county. That's a change of plus 10 from yesterday. There have been approximately 24 COVID-19 related deaths, which has been an increase of 4 since the numbers were reported yesterday. Here in the town of Adams, we presently have approximately 19 total cases, with 4 in recovery, 0 deaths. And I caution everyone, again, with those numbers, that doesn't mean there's not more. It just means that those are the numbers that we have counted for. It also doesn't necessarily indicate that we're doing well or we're saturated. That is very simply the current number of folks here within our 23 square miles who have tested positive, and thankfully no deaths. Town operations. Town operations have stabilized. Our DPW is back to a 50% work crew every 2.5 days. So we have a 6-person crew that works for 2.5 days and then goes home and rests and is on standby. This is designed to reduce the potential contamination and infection of the staff and continue to provide essential services for the town. Next week, we're hoping to start paving, and we're doing our best, even with limited numbers, to continue normal services and to stay on track for our spring cleanup, including street sweeping, etc. So that's where we are with DPW. Town Hall and the Council on Aging continues to operate from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Council on Aging in particular can be reached by appointment. There are food services being offered at the Council on Aging in limited van rides, so call Council on Aging if you need any services. There is a drop box by the front door of Town Hall. We're coming up on about, 3 weeks that we've had the drop box there. In order to pay your taxes, provide any correspondence to any town office, please use the drop box, and feel free to call the office in the morning starting at 9 o'clock until 1 p.m. Every office is staffed with one person. They will get back to you and they will answer the phone. So we are providing normal services as best as possible. Inspectional services is operating as normal, and I'll get into this in a little bit. But I also want to indicate, for those folks who may not know, that as a result of COVID-19 and the reduced operations of the town, I had to make the difficult decision to initiate furloughs of town staff. We have furloughed all the staff at the library, partial staff at the Council on Aging, and partial staff here at Town Hall. That also indicates that those folks that are still working from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. are furloughed for the balance of their normal shifts between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. And the reason for that is very simply, we better be very careful with how we move forward with our budget obligations for the balance of the year, and in order to be conservative in terms of what we're spending. I want to be very clear, particularly for town staff at home, that this was probably the most difficult decision I've ever had to make, and clearly the most difficult decision I've had to make in my 1 year here. But I believe it's for the best of the town, and we hope that we'll be able to resume normal operations as soon as possible. Nonetheless, I'd like to thank everyone here, the town staff, the Board of Selectmen, and everyone, frankly, even affected by this, who have been incredibly supportive and understanding of me as we go through this. So I'm thankful for it, but please know that we're doing the best we can to think through these issues and to make the best decisions as we go forward. I want to make a point that perhaps 2 of the hardest working guys right now, in addition to police and DPW and the folks still here in Town Hall, is our inspectional services. I want to make it very clear, while other communities have ceased construction and have ceased issuing building permits, the town of Adams has not. The town of Adams will continue to entertain and accept building permits and take these on a case-by-case basis. The town of Adams is open for business. We will do so reasonably, measured, and smartly, and continue to do our best to move forward and put ourselves in the best possible financial position as we move forward. For those at home who are interested in applying for a building permit, for any contractors who may be watching, call Inspectional Services and speak with the building inspector. Jerry will meet with you. He has issued multiple building permits. He asks for a simple work plan, and he goes out and actually inspects the work site. So I want to be very clear. Adams continues to be open for business. Inspectional Service continues to work. Mark Blaisdell, our code enforcement officer, is inspecting grocery stores, restaurants, etc. for compliance. My last cautionary term is the use of masks. There's been a lot of debate, and I want to be very clear, and Madam Chairman, you can jump in if you'd like. The use of masks are required by restaurant personnel as a safety precautionary measure. I go into the daily grind at least every other day, and Ben and his staff have masks on. That doesn't mean that they are sick. It simply means we're asking them to do that for your protection at home as an act of safety. You do not have to wear a mask. We are not asking the public to do so if you can maintain 6 feet of distance, such as in this room. We are all well with 6 feet away from each other. However, if you go to the grocery store, if you go to another store, or if you even happen to be out on the trail and potentially pass somebody within 6 feet, please wear your mask. It is nothing more than a safety precaution for you and for the general public, and is a tool to help beat the spread of this potential virus. That's about all I have for COVID-19. I don't think I have anything else, and I can't wait until I can stop giving this update.
Well, thank you, Jay. I appreciate the
Thank you.
thorough update that you provided. I will open it up to anybody in the room who has any questions for Jay.
Well, I would just like to thank Jay for keeping a good eye on the situation and reporting out so that the people of Adams feel assured that we are definitely taking a good look at this, taking it very, very seriously. And if we all work together, I think that better days will be coming. One thing with this virus is there's still a lot of unknown characteristics of it. For instance, one doesn't know right now if the warm weather, which usually curtails some types of viruses, will be the case for the COVID-19 virus. There's a good chance that there may be another infestation during the fall. So please remain vigilant on everything you do. Everything should be calculated, and that's the way we're all going to get through this together. And if anyone's interested, if you want to write this down for a website, people throughout the Commonwealth have wanted to know where the cases have been taking place, and there's been some pushback because of HIPAA laws. But on WBZ at boston.com, there's a town and city list of the numbers of all the people that have been affected. And I went on the website today, and it had Adams as 25 cases. It had it had North Adams with 29, and Williamstown, because of the situation at the Williamstown Common, was very high. And they give you a percentage, and it ranked them as being very high. So please, everyone, we can only get there if we work together as a team. So please do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Do you have anything?
Oh, I see people in the stores wearing masks, which is, they should be wearing. But I also see people taking and pulling the mask by their nose and pulling it up. That mask is sucking in whatever's in the air, and it's on the outside of that mask. Hopefully it's on the outside of the mask. When you're touching the outside of the mask and pulling it up, and you're touching your eyes, if you had COVID or anything on the outside of your mask, you're putting it into your system. You got to try to refrain from touching that mask on the outside at all costs. It's kind of defeating the purpose of what it's there for.
Rick, anything for Jay? Any questions?
Nothing.
Okay. John, anything?
Yes, I just have one question for Jay.
Sure.
The Governor Baker's been identifying testing facilities more towards the eastern part of the state. I was wondering for Berkshire County, Western Mass, for testing for healthcare workers, first responders. Have you heard anything about any testing type facility here in Berkshire County?
So there had been conversations early on about establishing a dedicated Northern Berkshire testing facility. That plan was scrapped because the facility down in Pittsfield is able to handle right now the testing load. There are provisions in a plan in place to execute if need be for Northern Berkshire testing facility, but thankfully right now, with the numbers, we're doing okay. Also, as you've probably heard from the governor's briefings, the private sector is starting to ramp up testing pretty well. So there's been a few other sources for testing, which has taken the load off the requirement. There's a separate testing facility for first responders, as well as the potential for a quarantine facility as well to take care of them, including healthcare workers. And all of that has been promulgated through emergency management and Berkshire County Boards of Health Authority. So if you're at home and you're wondering if you need to be tested, your first stop is your physician. Please call your primary care provider first. They'll ask you a series of questions. Depending upon how you answer those questions, you'll then be referred to testing and you'll go from there.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. I'll move on to the approval and signing of the annual town election warrant. We do have our town clerk who is with us. I've just unmuted you, Haley, just so that you're aware. But in our packets, there is the town warrant, and Haley, maybe you can walk us through it?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. So this is the annual town warrant for the annual town election on June 1st. It will be held at the Adams Highway Department at 92 North Summer Street from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Would you like me to read through all the offices that are available?
If you'd like to, you can. I think, John and Rick, do you have a copy with you?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yes, I saw it on the internet.
Okay. It has been posted, so I don't believe you have to read through all of them. But I appreciate you asking and offering.
Thank you. Well, if the board would please do so, I'd ask that you approve the town warrant. It needs to be posted 7 days prior to holding the annual town election, so that gives us plenty of time. Hopefully we will be out of quarantine by then and we can get the constable in to sign off and we can get it all posted.
Okay. So this evening, you are looking for a motion from the board to approve the town warrant as presented for the annual election to be held on you said the first day of June?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I got a message about the meeting logistics, so I got a little confused. Okay, so that is the motion. If somebody would like to make that motion?
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the town warrant for the first day of June 2020, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Adams Highway Department garage.
So I have a motion, and Haley, that satisfies what needs to be done? Okay, and I need a second.
I'll second it.
I have a second by Joe. Any questions in the room for the town clerk? Rick, do you have any questions for the town clerk?
Just for clarification, now we've already voted on this once for the first in May, but because of the date change, we have to do it again, correct?
You have not voted the town warrant yet. What you did 2 weeks ago at your meeting was change the annual town election date from May 4th to June 1st. This is the annual town warrant that needs to be posted to continue on with the election.
Okay, I thought we had already approved the warrant before we changed the date. Well, either way, that's fine.
Yeah, I thought we had approved the warrant for May 4th already. And so this is the same warrant, is what we were saying, but with a different date. I understood where Rick was coming from, because I thought the same thing. Okay. Rick, did you have any other questions?
No, that was it.
Okay, John?
Yes, I just have one for Haley. Let's say, hopefully not, that the first day of June we're still quarantined in some manner. Does it matter when we have the election? Can we just push it out to July and then to August? Is there any limit to this?
Currently, right now, the law states that we have to have the election by June 30th. So for some reason that we are still in quarantine, over the next couple of weeks, I'll probably be back before you asking to move the election again, if need be.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Haley, to that point, if we're still in June, the law hasn't changed, and all of our plans are foiled, will we have means for people to vote outside of showing up to the DPW garage on the day of an election and vote? Will we be able to do?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, we will. If you'll indulge me for a few minutes, if you can hear me okay?
We can.
Currently now, you can vote absentee by voting by mail. So if anyone at home is interested and is planning to vote on June 1st and doesn't feel comfortable coming to the DPW garage, please feel to call my office and we will mail you an absentee ballot application so that we can get you in the pipeline for when the ballots are ready and they come in. We can just mail it right out to you and you can vote and get it right back to us. Plenty of time. And the law also provides for what we're calling early voting by mail. So there's an application for that also. So there's a lot of options. You can find it on the town website, and feel free to just call the office and we will certainly put you in the right direction and get you your application. And again, once the ballots come in, we'll be mailing them out.
Okay. Thank you. All right, if there are no other questions, I do have a motion and a second, and I'll take a roll call vote. Joe?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And it's a yes from Christine, so that is unanimous. So the town election warrant is approved, and I believe I have an original copy here on the clipboard, and we will sign that and get that to you, Haley, so that you have that for your records as well. Because that was the message I got from Deb, who's following along. All right. So Haley, I'm going to mute you if that's okay. And let's see. The next two items, we do have the treasure tax collector on the phone. I'm going to unmute a couple of people and see. Kelly, do I have you?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Are you 3-2 or 3-8 at the end?
3-8.
Okay. Then I'm going to mute the other one. Okay. So Kelly, I still have you?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So, as you know, well, actually, Jay, do you want to?
Sure, I can give a brief
That'd be great.
summation. Sure.
Thank you.
As folks may know, this pandemic has just really affected municipal operations. Particularly in New England with town meeting and with meetings such as this, we pride ourselves on getting together in a room, having vigorous debate over items and coming to consensus and voting a path forward. This has really caused havoc, and the state is fully aware of that. The governor and legislature has done their best to provide some level of legislative relief for us from our statutory obligations, that being certain dates set for taxes that are due and interest and fees and penalties. So there's a lot of other provisions that have come out in legislation, but I'm going to narrow the focus down for this for the point of brevity. And that is, we have two options in front of us as a community. Option number one is the local option to extend the due dates of tax bills. So essentially, the legislation, the Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, Sections 10 and 11 are what we're talking about. Provisions within Section 10 would allow a community to extend the due date for particular taxes from May 1st to June 1st. The community, the chief executive officer of the community, city or town, has to affirmatively vote that option in. So the legislature is giving the option to the community to do it or not to do it based on their particular circumstances. The second item that you see on the agenda is local option to waive interest on late payments. The community has the opportunity, independent of extending the due date to June 1st, to waive any interest on late payments that may come about, anything that the locality may charge or anything that the state charges. So that folks at home understand, by normal operation of law, a community cannot waive late fees or penalties. In this situation, the legislature is giving the community authority to do so electively. So that's what we're discussing tonight. They are independent of each other. You do not have to vote for both. You may vote for one and not the other. Myself, the town accountant, and our treasurer collector has discussed this thoroughly, and we're prepared tonight to present to the board a level of information so you can make an informed decision on it. And once that decision is made, we'll be able to explain to our constituents exactly what that means for them. That's my introduction, and we can go from there.
Okay. So Kelly, did you want to say a few things before we have some discussion from the board?
I just wanted to say that as a member of the community of the town who pays taxes as well, I understand this, and there is going to be some hardship, and that's what I'm here for, to help anybody who needs it. So I'm going to leave it up to you guys to discuss, so we can discuss this.
Okay. And I did receive communications from a resident in the town of Adams who asked that I just read the email that was submitted, but asked to do so anonymously. The note just says that they feel that taxes payment deadlines should be delayed at least a month, if not more. If the IRS can extend till June, this person felt it would be appropriate to extend, as most people have been out of work since March 12th, 2020, and hopes that the Board of Selectmen will take this into consideration. The other communication has come forward from one of our local organizations. It is from the Forest Park Country Club Board of Managers. I will read the letter. Dear Board Chair Hoyt and Administrator Green, I'm writing this afternoon wearing my hat as part of the Forest Park Country Club Board of Managers. It has come to our attention that the Board of Selectmen will be considering a request to extend the due date for fiscal 20 taxes. We understand that these are challenging decisions, and at this moment in time, all entities, public and private, are struggling for revenue. At Forest Park Country Club, cash flow is a significant concern for our operation in the coming months. Our club is closed and has limited sources of revenue until the current restrictions are lifted. We are also in the unique position of having to still maintain the golf course during this time. There may be other local businesses or organizations with similar cash flow issues related to the pandemic. In addition, our organization's nonprofit status has not been deemed eligible for any of the payroll relief programs. We would ask that you consider extending the due date for an additional month. For an operation like ourselves, it will allow us to preserve critical cash flow during an unprecedented moment in our organization's history. We have served the town of Adams as a beloved public resource for generations and hope to continue doing so when all of this is behind us. Respectfully submitted, Board of Managers, Forest Park Country Club. And so it's communications like this, as well as outreach to several of us by email, phone calls, Facebook, whatever it might be, when this came out from the governor on April 3rd, that the Board of Selectmen consider this and consider it seriously. So I wanted to make sure that those communications were read as they were asked to be done so. And I will open it up to any questions of the treasurer by any member of the board sitting in the room first.
I would like to read a communication that I emailed to you and I emailed to Jay, and it goes as follows, headed to Christine. Due to the situation we find ourselves with COVID-19, the legislation put forth has merit. At the present time, our residents, many who are already struggling financially, this postponing of tax collection is a viable alternative. With the expectation of monies coming from the $2.2 trillion stimulus package to the citizenry, this may make tax payment less burdensome. Questions, however, will need to be surmised and evaluated. A few which come to the forefront without much time to ponder. Others include, how will this timetable affect the town budget? Also, if collections are delayed, the second property tax bill will fall quickly, and this will put more pressure on our town people who own property to come up with the cash. Will there be borrowing needed to run the town? Once the pandemic eases and things get back to a new normal, how many businesses will feel inclined to close due to their financial setbacks? Town officials really need to encourage business owners to work toward applying for relief through the stimulus monies. I am not versed well enough to understand the depth of the application process. I fear that most business owners will feel unable to muddle through the process. I hope I am wrong. The process is most difficult for the downtown owners because their time is occupied by trying to stay afloat. Small business is defined as employing 499 individuals or less. As you go up in numbers, it becomes much more advantageous for middle-size and up companies to have better resources to approach the application process. Also, and not stated, is that monies are not going to be distributed to all that apply. The monies are not enough. That is why if there will most likely be a fourth stimulus package. Being a novel virus, the standards to keep this country up and running are also novel. Stay well, Joe. I just like to, one of my concerns was I didn't have much time when I wrote this to think this over a little bit, but the application process is not all that complicated. I spoke to Melissa Tremblay. She is an employee overseeing this CARE Act at the Adams Community Bank, and she told me that the process is quite easy. You have to have 4 quarters of your earning revenue and able to show the breadth of your business. And also, few other things that came to mind now is with the state that our Commonwealth is, how stable will our cherry sheets be? Will they be able to be as much as we presume they will be, or will they have to be cut back because of the problems with, the states running into as far as revenues? Also, a lot of communities, I believe, are doing a 1 to 12 budgeting by going month to month with their budgeting process so that they don't get too far ahead and they can keep their financial situation a little bit more at bay by going month by month with their budgeting until the financial picture becomes more clear. And lastly, I heard on the news just before I came, they're thinking by tonight all of the money for small business ventures will be depleted. Yes. So you can see by that there are so many people out there that are, in the same situation that, a lot of our businesses here in town are. So that's just some of my thoughts on it. And my final statement will be that I would vote to allow 1 month delay in the collection of property taxes, both residential and business.
Jim, do you have questions, comments, anything?
Well,
Tax collector?
I just following up on what Joe was saying a little bit. Had a discussion with somebody that owns a small business today. He applied for relief, and the site online, it's no guarantees of money, but it's a possibility of getting some money. is www.sba.gov/funding-programs/coronavirus-relief-options. And what they'll do, they'll go ask you for your business information, how amount of money you earn or whatever. And you can make out the thing, and the person I talked to said that the case will be open till September. There's no guarantees. I'm not saying by any means, but it's something to look at for small business owners. That's all.
That's it. Rick, anything?
Yes, I have a question for Kelly.
Sure.
Do we know approximately how many of the property taxes are paid through escrow accounts?
I'm guessing around 65% of them.
Okay. The reason I ask is those monies should already be there. Every month, when you pay your mortgage, part of that payment goes into escrow for the tax.
I agree with you, but after some of the towns had already adopted the extension of the 30 days to June 1st, I had at least 4 banks call and wondering if we were changing ours too, because I honestly think they were going to wait to pay if they changed it to June 1st instead of paying by May 4th. And I said the same thing. You already have the escrows. Why are you asking this? You should be paying it like normal anyway. And I personally think they're just holding off because, the banks are doing, they got problems too that, I don't know, maybe they want the interest from it. I'm just guessing. But I said the same thing. You already have the money. Why are you worried about the deadline? And they really couldn't answer me.
If I may say something on that point, one of the problems is because of the lack of cash flow from individuals, they believe there's going to be a large run of people defaulting on their mortgages, and that may be one reason why they want to do that, to see they'll get a feel very quickly as this continues how many people are not going to be able to make their payments for their rent, their new homes, their mortgages, and all the other things that go along with being a purchaser of items and services.
I agree with that, Joe, but also being the collector, I deal with a lot of the banks that foreclose and take over properties that people don't pay their mortgage, and they still pay the taxes. Because then they become owners, so they're still going to pay the taxes.
Yeah.
That's if they're able to.
But if you make your monthly mortgage payment, the money is taken out every month and goes into a tax fund. That money's sitting in a bank right now to pay them taxes for this period.
Right, and even if the people default on their payments and the bank, after 3 or 4 months or whatever they're doing now, they still pay the taxes. The banks pay the taxes because they don't want the towns to take the properties because they'll lose a lot of money that way.
Right. That's what I was getting at.
Did you have a comment on that?
So one of the things that we spoke about is if the selectmen choose not to extend the due date from May 1st to June 1st, but chooses to waive any of the fees or the interest fees, that does not prohibit the treasurer from working one-on-one with folks who may not be able to make that payment, from entering into a payment plan. And by operation of law, if this board adopts the provision under Section 11 of that chapter to waive interest on late payments, there will be no late payments, there will be no fees, there will be no interest, and the treasurer can work one-on-one on a case-by-case basis with folks in order to do something that works for them. So just because the board may not vote to extend the date from May 1st to June 1st doesn't mean a person has to make that payment by May 1st. Each individual person has to look at their own situation, their own financial condition, and choose whether or not they can do that. So that's also something for the board to consider. That is one of the options this evening. Leave the due date alone, and there are other communities that have done that. Some communities have voted to move it all. Some communities have voted not to move the date at all and leave it on May 1st as well, but waive all the penalties, fees, and interest. And that allows this board to give relief to the community and allows the treasurer to work one-on-one with folks. So just because you may choose not to vote for that doesn't necessarily mean that a person sitting at home is going to have to pay for May 1st. They simply need to call the treasurer collector, explain the situation, and Kelly will work with them. Is that correct, Kelly? Am I phrasing that correctly?
You are, yeah, they have it, but with this relief, they have until before June 30th. Otherwise, and that's when when the interest is forgiven until June 30th. On June 30th, though, if no one calls and if not paid, the interest starts back from the due date of May 4th.
So, for example, the folks who wrote us this evening, if the board votes to hold the date on May 1st and not extend it to June 1st, that organization can still call up the treasurer's office and say, this is our situation, we're not able to pay for May 1st, we can pay for this date or anticipate this date. They can enter into that agreement with the treasurer, and there'll be no fees, penalties, or anything waived until June 29th.
Correct.
So just listing out the options for the board is, if you choose not to do that, that doesn't mean folks have to pay May 1st. There's still relief. The question for the board is, what is the technical nature of the relief that the board wants to offer? Kelly, do you want to, so now we know what the impact is on the constituency. That's the most important piece for us, is what's the impact on the taxpayer? The impact on the taxpayer is if you vote to extend the due dates of tax bills, nobody pays until June 1st. You can always pay early. We love it.
Correct.
To pay early, but you don't have to. Then if you adopt to waive interest on late payments, even if you don't make the June 1st payment, there's still a waiver of all of the interest. If the board doesn't vote to extend the date from May, you still have the option, assuming the board votes to waive interest on late payments, to work with the treasurer one-on-one, come up with a payment plan, and still not be penalized. You're still getting the best of both worlds. It's just we're choosing to do it on a case-by-case basis rather than carte blanche. Why is that the case? So Kelly, do you want to talk a little bit about what the municipal impact is if we extend the date from May 1st to June 1st, and I'm specifically talking about our bill schedule and cash flow, a little bit of how municipal finance works?
Well, yeah, we do have the emergency borrow and the payback, and we do have the school to pay their last quarter by June 1st. That's when they always get their money, is June 1st. That's the last payment. And there's insurance that has to be paid every month. But the payback, we do have the emergency borrow. We got to start paying back that money too. And there's payrolls in there, and there's a lot of bills in there. Some of these are emergency monies that we had to do to get emergency stuff to cover for our expenses for the culvert right at the moment. And all them bills got to be paid.
Right. So what happens is, if we vote to extend that date to June 1st, our cash flow pattern now shifts. So our cash flow will come in for a May 1st due date. Now it'll come in for a June 1st date. So any bills that are due between May 1st and June 1st will deplete what we have in savings. If we are not able as a town to pay our bill schedule, because our bills still come in like any other person, no one is waiving our fees and no one is waiving our bills and our payment schedule, then our only option is to go out and borrow money, short-term borrowing, in order to make payroll, in order to pay these bills. As with anything else, if you use someone else's money to pay your bills, you pay interest. So that was the concern of the treasurer collector and the town accountant and myself when we spoke about this, in order to give the board some options and a snapshot as to what the impact is that although we can't predict exactly what the impact is, because we don't know when people will pay, but there is the chance that our savings and our cash flow will be decreased to the point where we not be able to make our bills, and we might have to short-term borrow. So that is one thing to take into consideration. And that is why I want to make sure that the board understands that even if you choose to vote not to extend the date till June, folks at home, our taxpayers who are affected by this, still have that option to call up the treasurer and say, I can't make May 1st. And Kelly still has that opportunity to work with the individual and do that and waive the fees. If we choose to vote...
And I have already, I have already had phone calls and have already discussed all that, and they were very understanding and very pleased with that. If the due date is not extended, that the interest is until June 30th.
Right. So those are just some of the concerns we have. We wish we could tell you exactly what that financial impact would be, but we just don't. We don't know.
John, I haven't given you an opportunity to chime in yet, so I want to make sure that I do so.
Yeah, that's no problem. That's fine. Just for clarification, the authority that the board has is to extend to June 1st, right? Now, when we get to June 1st, we don't have the authority again to extend, right? This is a one-time extension.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
And so to reiterate what Jay had mentioned, we have the option under section 10 of chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020. Section 10 authorizes the board to extend the due date of tax bills to June 1st. And or we have the local option under section 11 to waive interest on certain payments made after due dates through June 30th of 2020.
Correct.
So
That's section 11.
Before June 30th.
Yep, okay. So we are looking at either section 10 or section 11 or both. And these are the sections under chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020.
And section 11 is a little bit more complicated, and I can read some language that's a little bit less legal for folks so they understand it. So we're going to talk about option D, 5D on the agenda item. That's the local option to waive interest on certain payments made after due dates. Section 11 of the Acts of 2020, chapter 53, includes a local option to waive interest and other penalties for late payment of any excise tax, betterment assessment, or apportionment, or other charge added to a tax for any payments with a due date on or after March 10th, where a payment is made after its respective due date, but before June 30th, 2020. This section allows the waiver of interest and penalties regarding late payments of bills with a due date of March 10th, 2020, or after, when such bills are paid late but paid on or before June 30th, 2020. This section does not permit the waiver of interest and penalties regarding bills with due dates prior to March 10th, 2020, or if the bill is not paid by June 30th, 2020. Essentially, Section 11 is the wider and greater benefit to the community. It allows the municipality to essentially say, you have until June 29th to pay your taxes without any late fees, interests, or whatever, and take these on a case-by-case basis. Section 10 will only extend the date until June 1st. It will not waive any payments, any fees, or anything like that. So essentially, it has to be sections 10 and 11 voted affirmatively to adopt, or section 11 alone in order to give the constituency a break. That's the best menu of options I can give you. Kelly, did I misspeak at all about that?
Very, very nicely. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with all of that, I will turn it over to the board and see what the board's pleasure is at this point.
Well, I'd like to make a comment on 11. I think that that's going to become awful cumbersome. I think that there'll be such a number of people going to the to see our town treasurer to make these kind of I don't know how to say it, maybe payment deals or the way that they're going to go about it. And I think that runs into a lot of extra time, a lot of extra cumbersome type of issues that may arise from this. I think my vote will be to extend it for 1 month. And the reason I'm doing that is because within that time frame, it should be quite clear that if people receive their money, which they're going to be getting from the government, $1,200 for an individual, $2,500 for a family, that will give them the needed cash if that's the way they want to go with it to pay their taxes. So I'm going to put forth a motion that the town adopt the legislation, Act 53, 10, and 11. You have to do 10 and 11 if you want to, just 10 on this one, right?
If you do not intend to waive any interest,
Right.
fees, or penalties,
Just
do not,
10?
just 10 alone. All that does is extend the date to June
Okay.
1st.
I'll make a motion through legislation, Act 53, stating that the town property taxes, both residential and business, will be delayed from the due date, which is May 1st to June 1st, 2020.
I have a motion by Joe. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Jim. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, this is John.
Yep, go ahead.
I have a question. If we do not extend it and we just keep it at May 1st, because some people and those that go through the bank, they can pay their taxes. They're going to pay on time. Not everyone, and it's fully understandable why not. But why do? So is it a requirement that they contact the treasurer's office after May 1st? To what's the reason that they have to? If we just say we're not going to extend it, everybody should pay. Everybody that can pay should pay by May 1st. Those that can't, we get. You have until the end of June, right, to pay. They can call the treasurer's office and talk and ask questions. Why would that be a requirement?
What, to extend it in order to get the, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak out of turn.
You're not,
Well, that's
you're
okay.
answering the question, Kelly.
Kelly.
So,
The question.
Okay,
Kelly, go ahead.
yeah. So you're asking that if we extend the due date, it's to the 1st, and they still, to June 1st, they still have until by June 30th to pay the taxes of interest-free only if you adopt Section 11. Otherwise, if you guys don't adopt Section 11, just 10, the due date is June 1st, and that's the due date. After that, it's not interest-free.
Correct.
Right, but what if the board does not approve to extend the date? But,
Yeah.
however, understandably, there are many that may not be able to pay their tax bill on the 1st of May, as the board voted, let's say, for example. Then you discuss that, just call the treasurer's office and we'll work out a plan and things like that. Why is that? Let's say, is that a requirement? Because I'd be in favor of, you can still pay it. You can still wait till June 1st without penalty, or just pay it by June 1st. We want to get the town needs some funds to continue to operate for those that can pay. For those that cannot, that's perfectly fine. you can pay by June 1st instead of May 1st. But then we mentioned that just call the treasurer's office to work out a plan. Is that a requirement if the board decides to stay with May 1st? And I'm sure the whole board's going to indicate, no penalties or late fees until June 1st at a minimum. Would they have to contact your office if they didn't pay by May 1st?
No, if you extend it to June 1st, but don't vote to do Chapter 11 to extend the interest, then they got until June 1st, and that's it. But my opinion is if you don't adopt Chapter 10 and adopt Chapter 11, they're getting a better benefit.
Right, don't adopt Chapter 10, but adopt Chapter 11?
Correct. That's my understanding and my opinion, yes.
Okay. So I'm not sure if I'm getting my point across. I'll refer to Jay. So, Jay, do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
I do. I think what you're trying to say is if we do not adopt Section 10 and keep the due date to May 1st, a person does not pay May 1st, they don't call the treasurer's office, and they pay on June 20th, is that acceptable? Essentially, it is, because if you adopt Section 11, there's no penalties, there's no interest, there's no fees. So there's really no penalty for a person deciding to pay on June 20th when they should have paid May 1st. Would that be correct, Kelly?
Correct.
Okay, because that's what I would support. I would vote no for this motion, and again, it's I understand both votes, but I would still keep the date of May 1st because there are some that can pay, and we need the funding. If we don't get the funding, we have to borrow, and that costs money to borrow. So, if you can pay by the 1st, thank you, and you're fortunate. And then do so. If you can't, no problem at all. No interest or nothing until the end of June would be my vote.
Okay.
I agree.
So I have a motion and a second on the table to adopt Section 10. I haven't chimed in. I was probably a week ago looking to adopt Section 10 after conversations. Actually, Joe, after your email with the number of questions about cash flow, et cetera, I had sent that off to Jay and to Kelly. I also sent it to Mary Beverly to kind of dive a little deeper into those questions and got a little bit more feedback and felt that we might be hurting for cash flow if we adopt Section 10, mostly because of what Kelly had talked about with our banks holding on to the payments currently. So, and that's not necessarily unique to Kelly's. Not the only one who has said that. I did ask Jay to reach out to town managers and mayors across the county today to find out if anybody had adopted both Sections 10 or 11 or what they are doing. Those who acted quickly seem to have adopted both. And that would be, I believe, North Adams was the first, and then Pittsfield, because their mayors were able to do that. And I think it's been Lanesboro, Great Barrington, and I feel like there might be one other in Cheshire.
Otis as well, I believe.
And Otis.
Mm-hmm. Otis or Beckett, one or the other.
And the others have indicated that they were advocating more for Section 11
yes.
if they are to adopt anything, because they felt it gave the constituency a little bit more leeway during a time when people probably need that. It actually gives somebody almost 2 months.
Correct.
Versus the 1 month.
Correct.
of a delay.
The common denominator, from what I'm able to gather in my brief conversations with those communities, the communities that adopted Section 10 had either a different payment schedule or they had greater cash reserves. Our cash reserves are good. We're in good financial shape, but those are based on a set payment plan with a set bill schedule so that we tailor our bill schedule based on our inbound cash flow. So we never have to do a short-term borrowing. If we extend it by a month, it throws that curve off. So we still have to pay, but we don't have the inbound cash flow that we had. By adopting Section 11, it essentially gives us greater range, case-by-case basis, to work with an individual constituent on their individual needs. And yet, as John stated, still require payment by May 1st for those folks, particularly, I mean, if you're a homeowner and you paid your mortgage, you already paid your mortgage, you already paid your taxes. Bank has the money. Municipality doesn't. We still have payroll. We still have expenses. COVID is costing us money in terms of supplies. Wastewater treatment plant supply chain has increased almost by 25% because the flow has gone up because everyone's home. Well, that costs money to process water and make sure that it's treated before it's discharged into the Hoosic. We're not budgeted for that. So our costs are increasing. Our costs are increasing for coverage when we have to take folks out and quarantine them. And the federal act that was passed for labor requires us to pay people an additional 2 weeks of sick time if there's a particular issue that they claim, of which we've had 1 or 2 folks do that. So there are costs associated with it. So that's just unfortunately the nuts and bolts financial reality of being in this predicament. The communities that haven't adopted it and have adopted 11 are somewhat similarly situated, or they're smaller, and they don't have the larger tax base that we have, or they don't have the cash flow. I think also by us taking a step back and not adopting this right away, because of our town government operation where we have to think this through and have a meeting like this to adopt it, because the board is essentially the CEO of the community, it's kind of made us realize that, in effect, Section 11 is the best of both worlds. Section 10 on its face looks good because it extends it by 30 days, but Section 11 basically says you don't have to pay any, no matter when you pay for the next 60 days, there's no interest fee. So we kind of came to the conclusion internally, why do that? Why damage? Our cash flow is going to be damaged to begin with. Mm-hmm. We're trying to minimize that because the last thing we have to want to do is go to the bank and take out a short-term borrowing in order to do that. So that's essentially what it comes down to. If you adopt Section 10 anyway and do it just for the sake of doing it, can I honestly say we're going to be negatively impacted? I don't know that. I just want the board to be aware of the risk so you can make an informed decision. If you do vote for it, we'll deal with it. I know Kelly will manage it to the best of her ability, but that is just some of the finances that we have to deal with here.
I'd like to say before the vote's taken that I'm going to stay strong with 10, and the reason I am going to stay strong on it is that we'll know by June 1st what our income is, how the taxes are coming in. If we continue it, we're going to play a guessing game whether the people are going to live up to their deals with the town treasurer, whether their obligations will be met, will they be able to meet their obligations. And if we just give a 1-month delay, we're going to know how our taxes fall come June 1st. But we're going to be in uncharted territory if we give till June 30th with all these deals. And like I said, I think it's a lot of extra paperwork. I think it's cumbersome. And I think we'll know better by giving people a month. As I mentioned, the money should be coming in to their family networks, and that will be one way of helping them pay their taxes. So I'm going to stay strong on it. If I get voted down, it's okay. That's what town government's all about, but I feel strongly about it.
Thank you, Joe. Any other discussion before I take a roll call vote on? Yeah, go ahead.
Section 11, if we vote for that, it's going to be taken on as a family by or household by household basis as for an extension, correct?
If you don't vote for 10 and you vote for 11, then everyone's due date remains May 1st. It waives all penalties and fees for not payment through June 29th. And you can either not say anything and just pay your bill on June 15th or on June 1st.
Right.
Or you can call the treasurer collector's office and say, I'm not paying May 1st. I'd like to pay by this date, and come up with a payment plan. It gives the person that option. If you don't vote for 11, but you vote for 10, which I believe is Joe's motion,
Yes.
10 simply says the due date is shifted 30 days till June 1st. You have until June 1st to pay. On June 2nd, your payment is due, and if you don't pay it June 1st, all those penalties and fees apply by June 1st.
Right.
If you vote for both, it essentially tolls the due date until June 1st, and then you have until June 29th to pay late without any interest or fees. And I hope I'm still, even at this late hour, correctly stating that.
Yes.
Thank you, Kelly.
So, I mean, the discussion is the stimulus check coming in. There's no guarantees that stimulus check is going to be at somebody's doorstep by June 1st. They're coming at all different times from what I've been reading. It's not a guarantee. It's a guaranteed check, but it's not guaranteed by June 1st. I read today some people could be getting it 3-4 months from now. 45 days to an individual, approximately, for an extension, it's not a lot of time, especially if you're not working. Where are you going to come up with the extra money in 45 days? I think we should.
I'd like to say on the stimulus checks that they're going to be sent to the low-wage earners first. The people that will be getting the checks are in the fold of the type of people that live in the town of Adams, people that aren't financially sound. So the monies will be going to the people that's low income, which I think Adams really falls within that rank of being a low income area and low-income community. And the checks have already been going out. They're being direct deposit. So many people have been asking if their check has been put in that they can't keep up with, and a lot of websites have been going down. If you're going to get yours by mail, it probably will come April 30th or a little beyond that. And the process is going strongly as far as those. As far as the other stimulus options within the $2.2 trillion stimulus, there's still a lot of hiccups, and people aren't very satisfied with the way the stimulus monies are being given out. But the checks to individuals and families are going on right now, and they're going well from what I've been hearing and told. And that's all I'm going to say, so my motion is
Okay, so any other discussion about the motion regarding Section 10 of Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020?
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Rick.
Just to add, go ahead, Rick. Go ahead first.
Rick first.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm going to have to vote no, because I'm afraid that as a municipality, while we're kicking the can down the road, we're going to get hit by a truck. Whether it be with interest from financing, no cash flow.
Okay. All right.
Hello?
Yep. Kelly, did you want to respond to that, or did you want me to move on to John for discussion?
No, you go ahead. I thought I hung up, sorry.
Nope, you're still on. John.
Okay.
John, you had a comment?
Oh, yes. So no one knows when this is going to end, or at least to begin to partially end, when we can begin to get back to a, somewhat of a normal life. And my opinion is, I'm working from home, and I could be doing this for a few more months. And there's those that are on unemployment, and they've been calling, and they can't get through, and they still haven't got checks yet. So I just think this is going to last a while. So giving that extra 30 days, which would give more to the end of June, may make a difference for some. It's just going to take some time, and no one knows when we're going to get back to people getting back to work. And the other thing is the stimulus checks. People getting those. A lot of people, and using it just to get the rent paid. Not even think about paying the taxes with those checks. Just to pay their mortgage, to pay their rent, to pay the groceries, unemployed, people that are employed. So I just think, for me, I'm just basing my no vote on this in support of Section 11. It's just to give people in the community an extra 30 days from June 1st to June 30th to be able to try to come up and pay their taxes with no penalties or fees. And if there's an issue, to call the tax collector and to work out some kind of a payment plan. So that's why I'll be voting no.
Okay. So I'm going to take a roll call vote then, and I'll start in the room. I think I already know the votes on the phone, but I'll still ask you anyway. So I have a yes from Joe. Jim?
No.
No from Jim. Rick?
No.
John?
No.
And it's a no from me. So that motion does not pass. That does allow us to act on Section 11 of Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, which would give the local option to waive interest on late payments. What is the board's pleasure with regard to Section 11?
Madam Chair, I'll
Yes.
make a motion to adopt Section 11, whereby we waive interest on late payments and fees.
Yep, it would authorize the treasurer collector to waive any interest and penalties on property tax and personal property bills.
Yes.
Right.
Yep,
I'll second that.
and I have a second by Jim. Any discussion with regard to Section 11? Go ahead,
As far as the
Joe.
motion goes, does 10 have to be also said? Well, then when I just said 10 before, and 11, you said it only had to be 10, so if he just says 11, 10 doesn't go with it? Because that's what I
Correct.
got the feeling, okay.
Correct. They're both, because they're separated on here, Joe, so
Okay.
local option to extend, we have to do them separately.
Yep. So this would just be for Section 11. Any other discussion from the room? Joe, Jim?
No.
Rick? Any discussion?
Nothing.
John?
Just one more time, with this motion, can you to verify the date that the extension goes to? It's June 30th?
That is correct.
Yes.
No,
Wait,
the motion should be paid before June
Oh, yeah.
30th.
June 30th is the final, right before June 30th, without interest or penalty.
correct.
Correct, because as of June 30th, there is.
Let me read some Department of Revenue Division of Local Services language. If a city or town exercises the option to waive interest, what is the last day for a taxpayer to pay the bill and qualify for the waiver of interest? The answer is June 29th, 2020. The relevant language in the legislation is, quote, made after its respective due date, but before June 30th, 2020. If the bill is paid on June 30th or after, it is paid too late for the waiver to apply. Interest will run from the date the bill is due to June 30th or the date after June 30th that it is paid. For example, if a property tax bill's due date was extended to June 1st and it is paid on June 30th, interest will run from the due date of June 1st to June 30th. If the bill is paid July 15th, 2020, interest will run from June 1st to July 15th. If, however, the bill is paid on June 29th, interest will be waived. Was that clear for everybody?
Yeah, that's clear, and the date is June 29th. There would be no interest or penalties for someone to pay their taxes for their home or business until June 29th, 2020.
Correct. So even though Section 10 was not adopted, if the due date is May 1st and the person chooses not to pay, can't pay, as we've talked about tonight, there's still no interest, any fees or penalty if the person still cannot make the May 1st date. It's just that the waiver of those penalties goes back to May 1st rather than, say, June 1st. So if the person pays after June 29th, the fees and penalties clock goes back to a May 1st due date rather than a June 1st due date. That's the only distinction. Kelly, did I state that correctly?
Yes, but our due date, just so everybody knows, is May 4th.
May 4th. Correct, because we're closed on Fridays here, so.
Correct.
Yeah, before the vote is taken,
Sure, Joe.
Kelly, I'd like to ask you, do you think you'll have the means to be able to do this in a manner which will be readily been able to ascertain by you and your Ashley? And what will your parameters be to make sure that after the June 30th date is come, and I would really like to know, because it appears to me that the vote is going to be 4-1, I'd like to know as soon as possible how many people are coming in and trying to set up kind of a payment plan with you.
Well, they don't technically need a payment plan, but some of them have already called and said, I can't pay by the 1st, but I can pay right after, in the middle of May. I'm like, that's fine.
Right.
Some of them they don't want, they didn't, they're like the 30th. Well, that's too long for me. But they're like, none of them have a problem. It's just that right now, most of them are working. They're just not getting the income. But if it was a little bit after May 1st, they could do it. And I'm like, well, that's fine. A lot of them, and if they do need a payment plan, I explain everything to them. I don't think we'll have a problem because a lot of them are paid by escrow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No, I'm not okay.
All right.
And we are putting this on the website hopefully tomorrow, sometime tomorrow or by Friday, of what this details, and it will be on the website.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, anybody on the phone have any further discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Joe?
No.
Jim?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And it's a yes from Christine. So that is to put in place Section 11 of Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, authorizing the treasurer collector to waive any interest and penalties on property tax and personal property bills due May 4th, giving them until June 30th.
29.
No,
June 29th.
through June 29th. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you for the robust conversation. Kelly, I appreciate your time this evening, and thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
I'm going to mute you now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Technology at its finest. Sorry, everyone. That brings us to, under new business, community development and capital projects update. We do have Donna Season on the phone, I think. Donna's been patiently waiting.
Yes.
Thank you, Donna,
Yes, thank
for
you.
waiting an hour and a half to get on the phone and to talk through with us. I have presented, I've given a copy at everybody's seat, the project summary that you have put together for April 2020. I think it's at your nameplate, Joe. Sorry.
I was supposed to sit here. I thought Ed said he was coming to the
Oh.
meeting. He had emailed and said he was going to come, so I thought that was it. Excuse me.
That's okay. No worries.
I thought he was coming too.
So I will address that. I did ask legal counsel not to be present in the room because we are at capacity. I'm trying to keep the limit to no more than 6. The governor's orders is 10 person. We've been trying to keep it around 50% or around 5 people. And I'm comfortable with up to 6 because this is really not a large space. And that's what we have in the room this evening, are 6 of us. Rick and John have graciously continued to call in to make sure that we maintain half of the board here and half not in the room in case the room does have COVID in it. I mean, we don't know, right? I mean, I know that everybody is sanitizing and doing everything they can to clean, and I saw you with the Clorox wipes when I came in, wiping down every inch of this room. But it is for, to keep us all protected and keep government running. So I did see Ed's response asking, and he's on the phone and he's gonna give his presentation, but I did ask him to respectfully stay home and to call in. So
I would just like to say, the governor said 10 people, so you can supersede what the governor has to say if we can distance properly here?
Yes, we have that authority.
Okay.
Yep.
No.
I don't know if I'm superseding, but I'm taking precautions to keep us all safe, Joe.
The technical term is we can become more restrictive. We can't say we want 20 in the room, but we can say we want less than 10.
So that brings us back to the community development and capital projects update. And Donna, thank you again for your patience. And if you wanted to go ahead and start maybe with an overview. I know there's quite a bit here on the list, and at our last meeting, this was a question that came up from a couple of board members about where we are with projects, what projects can continue given where we are with restrictions and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Just as an overview, you know, I provided detail for each of the projects. These are bigger projects that we're currently working on. I would say that we're on schedule with just about all of the projects. I don't anticipate any serious delays. And I believe through some kind of creative thinking, we can advance all of our projects forward. If you want, I can kind of walk us quickly through. The first group of projects we're continuing to work on the Greylock Glen Resort. As you know, we've been working with McClay Architects on the design of the outdoor center. That design is now 100% complete, and the architects are working with town staff on development of the public bidding documents. Since this is a new building, it's a very complicated set of public bidding documents. We haven't determined yet, but there'll probably be in the area of like 10 to 20 filed sub-bid categories. Typically electrical, HVAC, windows, doors. So all of those will require filed sub-bids. So it's a big undertaking to prepare the public bidding documents, but once that's done and a funding source for construction is obtained, we're ready to go. Similarly, with the water supply, I think the board knows that we've gone round and round in terms of how to bring water to the first two components of the Glen. That would be the outdoor center, and then we hope to follow up with that on the campground. So we're trying to design the water system to serve those two components. We're waiting on a proposal from Wright Pierce. We had identified the MassWorks infrastructure program as a source of funding for the water supply work, but we're hearing things about stimulus, nothing definitive. But I've asked Wright Pierce to update their proposal to expedite it so we could be ready even quicker should a funding source be made available. So both of those elements of work are proceeding now. I don't know if I should stop and ask if there's any questions or move on.
Any questions?
No, I'd just like to say, Donna, this capsule summary has been very helpful for me to be able to look at it and see where we are on projects, so thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. Okay, so moving on to building projects, I think as the board knows, our Memorial School, we've been working on the HVAC. This is funded under our 2018 CDBG program. In January, we had Kurtz Incorporated. They're from Westfield. I've never worked with them as a contractor. I'm really pleased. They were low bidder. They've been fantastic to work with. That project has been going great. We were meeting every 2 weeks, having project progress meetings, but that stopped on March 5th because of social distancing. The building commissioner is kind of our eyes and ears. He makes weekly checks of the project, and then we have our kind of project meetings online. We are anticipating substantial completion by the end of this month, and then there'll be another 30, 40 days for a closeout. So we're on track to close this out by June 30th. Similarly, 65 Park Street, I think as the board knows, we received a small grant from the state to do a universal access for the registry building. That project is out to bids. Bids are due the 23rd of April. We did have a walkthrough. Becky tried her best to keep all the contractors socially distant. She wore masks, the architect wore masks, and some of the contractors wore masks. But we're seeing there's a lot of interest in our projects, as the board can imagine. People are hungry for work. So I will say that they're grateful when they see towns moving forward and thinking about keeping people, working. So this project, it has a June 30th deadline. We anticipate some flexibility by the state, but even if there isn't any flexibility, we're on track to kind of close out the project, if not June 30th, by the end of July, and the state usually gives the additional 30 days for closeout. And just in case the board knows, with bidding, typically bids have to be publicly opened and read. We always have the town administrator's office as the location, but with a little ingenuity, we're going to do it on the front town hall front steps. We'll have a table there. We can open the bids, and people can stay on the sidewalk area, be socially distant. I think we'll comply with the law quite satisfactorily and keep these things moving forward. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, I have a question on the Memorial School. I went in there the other day and I spoke to some of the workers there, and are we getting as far along as we hope to with the monies, with the work being done? They informed me, and you have it mentioned here, that a lot of the work is in the gym, the locker rooms, the shop area. Were we hoping to get a little farther along with that as far as setting an HVAC system up for potentially someone coming in to make housing units?
Well, this project was more expensive than we anticipated, based on the cost estimate that we prepared. Now it's over a year ago that we prepared that. That's always been somewhat problematic in that you're developing a cost estimate a year or more before you actually do construction. We tried to build in a contingency, but that contingency was far short of the actual cost. In talking to the administrator and the building commissioner, it was our decision to go forward with a reduced scope of work. I mean, we still got the HVAC in, and we were still able to, we'll be able to make the building to be occupied. But some of the things like windows and some additional work that we were hoping to pick up, that had to be left by the way.
Okay, and I was just wondering, there's not going to be any heat put in the auditorium area right now?
No, that was not put in initially. I mean, we had hoped to do it, but again, the cost of construction.
Okay, thank you, Donna.
Sure. So moving on to the next category of projects is our public facilities projects. Those two projects, Russell Field Improvement Project and then the Town Common. With Russell Field, this is our major project under our fiscal year 19 CDBG. We've been working with Gutlow and Associates. They're putting the final touches on the bid package. We will probably advertise it in Central Register tomorrow. If we get the ad in tomorrow, it will appear next week, next Wednesday in Central Register, and then we'll advertise it in Combis and also in the Berkshire Eagle. So we're expecting that project to be out to bid, and we're hoping that this work will be able to proceed this summer. Now, this is a little bit trickier. As you know, you all have probably read, the governor's what's essential. Things like HVAC, public works are all essential. Some aspects of this, like the fitness equipment, the playground equipment, if that might give us problems, but we're hoping as we move forward later in the summer, again, the restrictions will be lifted, so we'll be able to finish the project during the construction season. Again, there's been a lot of interest. People have been, prior to the bid package going out, people are asking, they're hearing about that this might be out. So we've had, I'd say, 3 to 5 calls from contractors. Hey, will you put me on the list when this goes out? The Town Common project, Ty and Bond is finishing up the bid package for this. This one's a little different. Under the park program, they do not allow you to start, because it's a 2-year grant program, we can't start construction until July 1. So with this, we are making sure that we have a contractor on board. We've already gone through pre-construction, et cetera. So that contractor can be mobilized July 1 so we can make the most of this work. Obviously, the focus of the project will be to create the foundation for the new statue and then completing the rest of the work in the common. We are relying on DPW to do some demo work. I will continue to talk to Tim and Robert about that. There may be some delays on getting that done, but other than that, I think we're on track with this project as well. Any questions?
Yes, I have a couple. For the Russell Field Improvement Project, you brought something up that I was going to say about non-essential things being done, and you had mentioned that. But because of that, and this was on fiscal year 19, we've got to hustle to get this done. So will there be any extensions given through the Community Development Block Grant so that if we overrun the time that we want to get this done and we couldn't get this fitness and all the other things that are called term non-essential, will we get extra time to do that?
Yeah, typically, Joe, we always, for most of our CDBG projects, they're an 18-month schedule, but routinely communities, and Adams included, we ask for a 6-month extension. We find that, particularly for construction projects, it's very helpful to extend the contract over winter. So then in the spring, you can see if there's any settlement, like with the parking lot or some of the vegetation and plantings that are put in place. If they die out, you're right there to get the contractor before you do the final closeout to replace those items and fix those items. So even though our grant deadline is December 30th of 2020, I anticipate the ability to, again, extend it to June 30th, 2021. So we would have that extra time.
Okay, and on the Town Common renovation project, what is the meaning of repurpose the gazebo? Is that to remove it and bring it somewhere else where it could be used?
Yes, Becky is tracking down, we heard from DPW that there's some residents that have a very strong emotional connection to the gazebo. I think Becky has been asked by somebody if she could have it. I don't know if she has had the conversation with the town administrator about whether this would be considered surplus property. So we haven't figured out the exact procurement, but that would be something that we would be exploring in the very near future.
Yeah, I just want to say I got a few calls from people about the gazebo and, you know, their feelings that they didn't just want it to be demolished and taken away.
Yeah. Right. It is, it is in fairly rough shape, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't be, it still could be maintained and be very useful. So we certainly want to explore those options, and I'll make sure that we touch base later with you, Joe, so we can compare notes on that.
Okay, thank you.
So for transportation projects, I know the board, I think the last time I was before the board was with your approval of the order of taking for the Route 8 project. We were able to get all the documentation into the state right-of-way office, and I think because of COVID, they have extended the date. As you remember, we were hoping that they would actually, Mass DOT would advertise the project in March. We've been told it will be advertised next month, but everything we've, Jay had recently signed the traffic control agreement and the non-participation agreement for the additional pipelining. So that project is ready to go for advertising. I would anticipate the state is going to really try to get this project out for this fall, even though we've heard some horror stories about delays in bidding and stuff. But I would think that the state's going to want to be able to offer an opportunity for construction workers. So the costs have continued to go up. Our latest estimate now, John would know this better, but it's $9.1 million. So I think we're going to be getting a mile of essentially new roadway with all new drainage, sidewalks, everything. So that should last the town for a good long time. Corrado Street, as the board knows, this is our complete streets project. That bid has been issued, or the invitation for bids was issued on the 9th of April. So far, we've had 12 contractors request the bid package. Bids are due the end of the month, April 30th. And I think this will be a good project. It's not going to inconvenience the homeowners any, and I think we'll be able to finish that up in 90 days, maybe 120 for final work. So that's moving forward. And then the Asheville to Cook Rail Trail extension, we signed, first we finally got the contract with Mass DOT for federal funding of the design. Basically they're doing it in phases, so the contract is for 25% design. That's really the big push. We also executed a contract with VHB using some Chapter 90, 20% of the overall project with VHB. We're hoping that we can get that design public hearing before the end of the calendar year. They are out doing survey. They were out today. I've talked to the property owner, so she's aware, and I think everything's good with that, moving forward as expeditiously as possible. Any questions?
Yeah.
John, did you have anything you wanted to add about the Route 8 improvement project? I know that's one that you've been working closely on.
Nothing really. Donna's correct that the price has reached $9 million, but the MPO group that I'm a representative to, we do review all these projects with District Highway 1 every meeting, and we transfer funding as a board. Some projects just aren't ready to go yet, so some of that funding can be transferred to a project like ours that we're ready to go. So far, the MPO, the board, and DOT and Mass Highway District 1 we've all agreed that we're moving forward and that the funding is still there, ready to go, as Donna has stated.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Joe, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think, Donna, you brought up a very good point that a lot of these construction companies are really hungry for work now. And do you feel that this the bidding may help some of these expected costs to be lessened?
That is a good point. I would think so. We always are encouraged when you have a lot of interest. This is like in the past as well, when there's a lot of interest, people tend to sharpen their pencils more. So I would hope so, yes.
Okay, and I was going to ask you, but you answered my question. I did see some people down along the Hoosick River, and I wasn't sure what they were doing. I thought it may be culturally something, but I'm glad to see that people are down there taking a look at it.
Yes. Yep. So the last group of projects is projects, it's a bad title there, flooding projects, but these are projects that came about as a result of the flooding that we experienced back in September of 2018. And the project that I'm really focused on is Grant Street. I think, as the board knows, we got approval for under the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, MVP. It was a big grant. There's money there for Berkshire Regional Planning and Franklin Council on Governments. But what we were the lead community, and my interest in being the lead community was, could we get funding for Grant Street? And I was pleased that we were able to get, it's about $580,000 for construction, and then there's close to like another $70,000 for engineering, both of which will help the town. We obviously still have to put in 25%, but we were looking, as the board probably remembers, we were looking at shouldering that entire cost, and it was just about $800,000. So our costs will be reduced now to like around, under $300,000. I'm hoping to get the project out before the end of April, but it's most likely going to be that first week in May. The engineers still have, they still have a little bit of survey to do, and some soil borings to do before they can finish up. But they're well on their way to getting that done quickly. So, and they are working on the bid package now. So that project, I know the neighborhood is has some of the neighbors have sent me inquiries. Is this still going to happen? We need to, we won't be able to have the public meetings that we had told them that we would, to keep them informed, so I'm going to have to use mailings, but I think they're just going to be very grateful that the project is going forward this summer. Davis Street, similar situation. That neighborhood has certainly waited a long time. We do have a set of plans now from Hill Engineers. Those are being vetted by DPW staff now. That would replace the 5-foot culvert with a little bit larger culvert, but the most important aspect of it is it has expanded and armored wing walls for extra resiliency. This project will require Conservation Commission approval, so that is something that, Community Development is also working on. How do we get our other boards? They're not as advanced as you guys in terms of having meetings, so we need to get that going as well, so we can not delay projects like this with Conservation Commission approval. But I do want to make sure that we are able to get this project going this summer and not lose another construction season. And then I think, as the board knows, Jordan Street Culvert, we applied under the hazard mitigation program through MEMA. They recommended our application to FEMA with an obligation of $1.7 million in federal funding, and then the town would provide a 25% cash match, which we have in the borrowing. So on March 13th, FEMA had requested some additional information. They base their funding allocations on a very complicated cost-benefit analysis. We had to hire an engineer who was familiar with this process and with the modeling to do this. So they're just asking for more information. They actually get into the details of the neighborhood that's impacted, what is the average rent of the people and the income levels of the people. So this is the kind of data that we need to provide FEMA. We've been given an extension, so we hope to get it in the next couple of weeks to FEMA, and we've been told that they can take a year or more before they make a decision. I imagine with all that's going on, this is only going to be more delays, but at least there was a recommendation for this project moving forward. So,
All right.
okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question for the Grant Street drainage project. It's because of you being the first in the county to get the municipal vulnerability program up and running that we were awarded that $580,000, and it also went through the Mohawk Trail Woodlands Partnership. So it's because of your work that that money came to us, and thank you.
Oh, well, you're welcome. It's a good program, and you know what was pretty amazing, and as I think, you know, a number of the board members participated in that MVP workshop program, and all of the areas that we were hit with during those September flooding events were previously identified by that workshop. You know, get people coming together and identifying where we had problem areas. So that was really eye-opening to me, and I think the state's doing a good job on this, and it's a good program for us to participate in. So thank you, Joe.
Yep, and lastly, in times moving on, just two other projects we have going. I see up at Bellevue Cemetery there's some work now being done. And where do we stand on the Hoosick Valley Coal and Grain Project?
So Bellevue is going forward. We actually, Community Development did the public bidding for that, and we worked through the design process with EDM. And then now I didn't put, I kind of thought of that, I should have put Bellevue on that, but Robert's now kind of taking that project over, but so but my understanding they're moving forward on that, and I think they'll be you know, finishing that up probably in 60 days or so. With the coal and grain, I didn't mention that either. I worked today on the bid package for the hazardous material abatement work that will occur in both the grain tower and then the other barn structure there. We have that, and then we're waiting for the final specifications from our licensed site professional, TRC. They're putting those technical specs together for the cleanup of the coal dust and other contaminants in the ground. So we're getting that done. We have, I think, until the end of the year to get that done. And once the project is cleaned, once the site is cleaned up, we hope in our March application, so that would be the 2020 CDBG program, we would apply for funding to complete the Coal and Grain Park at that location.
Yes, and I'd like to say I took a close look at the grain building there, and if you look at it closely, it's starting to decay rapidly. So, is there any way that money could be put to look at the structure, because I see a lot of rot there, and it's just such an impressive, one-of-a-kind building. What can we do about that?
Well, we actually have a proposal from Austin Design. We talked to them about the project. They did our library, renovation project. I was very impressed with their work and thoughtfulness with historic buildings. We asked them for a proposal. This is about 6 months ago. And to be honest, I haven't had the funding because of other projects and priorities. But I hope with the new budget year that we'd be able to get them under contract. I think their fee was like modest, around $12,000, to basically develop a design to stabilize the building, and then we can once it's stabilized, once we protect it from the elements, protect the building envelope, then we can go forward and think about various scenarios for reuse. But what I think your point is, we need to stabilize the structure now.
Yep, and in closing, thank you so much for what you do for this community. You're one of a kind.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Joe.
Jim, do you have any questions for Donna?
No.
Okay. Rick, do you have any questions for Donna or comments?
I do not.
Okay. John?
Just briefly that
Sure.
Donna's gone over many projects that it is a long list. We didn't go for this funding. Other communities are lining up to take it. So we're lucky to get the funding that we get. And we have a staff at our community development office. You count on one hand, even less than that. There's only a few at our department. So they perform miracles to get the grant funding that we get and the projects that we have been fortunate to complete. So again, thank you, Donna, and to your staff for everything you do for the minimal size of people that we have, the amount of grants that we do get awarded, and the projects that we do complete. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, just not to make this too much of a love fest, but it goes both ways. You guys support us, and having the board vision and support for the long haul, that's really important to keep these projects going. So thank you too.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate you being with us tonight in this unconventional way, but
yes, it's not the most engaging, but
No.
under the circumstances. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Oh, I muted John. Sorry. Okay. All right, that brings us to just an FY21 budget update. I know Jay, you and Mary have been working on finalizing a budget to hopefully get before the full board here in short order. I don't know, I put this on more as a placeholder, but hoping to have something, I think, next week, at least in hands for people.
We're ready to submit to the budget subcommittee, as we spoke about. We'll do our best to get it in front of the selectmen. Then we'll do our best to figure out how to work a finance committee meeting. Our goal is to be ready for a June town meeting.
Okay. So that's kind of where we stand with that, but I know Mary has been working very diligently.
She has.
On the fiscal 21 budget.
Most certainly has.
And I appreciate her work on that. So department reports. Jay, do you have anything?
I don't have anything further.
Okay. Town council, you've been very patient, sitting on the phone for over 2 hours. And we do have your report here in front of us. I've unmuted you, so you're free to talk and go through your report.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
All right, so since my last report, I worked on the following matters. I continued working on a pending litigation matter. That work included legal research and responding to court requests for information. I also researched the viability of a deed transfer, including an examination of the records at the Registry of Deeds, and I provided advice concerning the options available. I've begun to draft a purchase and sale agreement. I also reviewed and provided comment concerning the proposed Board of Health tobacco regulations, and I responded to an inquiry concerning a housing issue. And lastly, I just wanted to my sorrow about the passing of Arthur Skip Harrington. I worked with him for 2 decades for the town in his capacity as assistant building inspector, as well as serving as a member of the Board of Selectmen. He was one of the greatest guys to work with. I will miss him, as I'm sure many residents in the town will. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Anybody in the room have any questions for legal counsel?
Yeah, one
go
quick
ahead, Joe.
question. How do we stand with Brightwater Paper? What has happened there, and what is our next step?
Well, right now, with you're talking about the MJD litigation.
That's correct, yep.
And yeah, so what's happened is that the land court is currently taken jurisdiction over the case. They are currently processing the paperwork, and for lack of a better term, that's what they're working on. With everything in the court system being put on hold because of the COVID